Hi, welcome to Table Talk with Kristy Harris. I want to thank today's sponsor, Replica Wines. They're now offering $5 flat shipping on their website with purchases over $65. Replicawine.com. I'll leave their website and their links in the show notes below. Today's guest is my husband, Andy Harris. Let's welcome him to the show. So let's get into this Replica wine. We're going to taste the Chardonnay today.
So this Chardonnay, you can get it through the winery. Retails for $16 a bottle. But what I would suggest, unless you're nowhere near a Total Wine, you can go to Total Wine & More. Retails for $9.99. And let's see what this is all about.
Cheers.
It's a young wine, obviously. I believe this thing is a 2019. It's a high-acid California Chardonnay. It's got a little bit of oak in it and some stone fruit, a little bit like peaches. And it's a pretty good wine. This thing would probably actually do okay with a decant and allow it to come back up to about 65 degrees. It would totally go with food. It's not really a drink alone, but it is a good wine. And if you're barbecuing chicken, this is probably really good and very enjoyable.
Great. So a little bit about the show. Welcome to the show. This is our first episode, obviously. I wanted to start the show to talk about food, wine, and travel and my enthusiasm and all those topics. And I want to have on guests that are in the industry, small business owners who may have been hit hard last year through the closures. And I want to promote you. If you want to be on my show, email me at, I'll leave that in the show notes too at the bottom under the link, and we'll talk. So I want to talk a little bit though about how we met. We met at a wine tasting. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
And when I met you, we were chatting and we both discovered that we were on paleo diet.
Right.
Which is, I'm sure you've probably heard of paleo by now, but it's a no grains, no dairy, mostly meat and vegetables and fruit in your diet. So we were already both doing that, doing the gluten-free thing. And then we both ran. We were runners and ran races. And I thought that he was kind of like just a jogger. Like I didn't really realize he had a long career of running. And also, we're both libertarian. So we found that out. So that was kind of like a needle in the haystack type of thing.
Yes, it is.
So I wanted to have you on to ask you though, because obviously you are more of a runner than I am, and you have a history of running, and you're a marathoner, obviously. And I know people come to you a lot and ask you for diet advice and tips. So if someone came to you and that's interested in getting healthier, what do you think is the most important step for them to do?
Well, it varies from person to person. Everybody's different. A lot of people think that physical fitness is all about going to the gym or running and getting lots of exercise. However, I think diet, and this seems contrary to even the way I've lived my life the last 50 years, playing sports and eating like a horse mostly, is that really diet's more important because you can't get anywhere on a bad diet. Like Kristy says, you can't outrun a bad diet, and it's true. I've seen people that actually the more they ran, the more weight they gained, because running makes you hungry. And I'm just talking about running. I mean, it could be swimming, cycling, all these cardio-style sports.
Right.
Really drive up your appetite. So if you're going to get really hungry, you're better off having a salad than having pastrami sandwich. I'm just throwing that out there. It just comes to mind. And for years and years in my running back, it started in the early 70s and 80s and 90s, we were focused on carbohydrates. And that's what we were eating, and we're trying to eat the most of, because that was considered the primary energy source. And the concept, especially in marathon running, is that you want to get as much glycogen stored in your liver as possible. And that comes strictly from carbohydrates. And that way, when you're 2 hours into like a 2.5, 3 hour marathon, you don't hit that proverbial wall,
right.
And you'll have the energy to keep driving forward and have the strength and not run out of gas. But so what we were doing back then is we were eating all these big combination pizzas and drinking
right.
lots of beer and, running about 90 miles a week. And what was funny is that we thought we were on a high fat, or we thought we were on a high carbohydrate diet, but we were really on a high fat diet, which makes me wonder, because I've run 25 marathons and I've never hit the wall. So I must have been burning all that fat the whole time I was running and not really even getting many carbohydrates. But really, if you look at yourself in the mirror and you think you're overweight, it's probably because it's not because you've had too much fat. The misconception is that fat people eat a lot of high-fat food. Actually, I've known a lot of fat people. We all have, and I've watched how they eat, 'cause it's interesting. And all diet notwithstanding, if you eat a lot of carbohydrates, you're going to gain weight. There's just no two ways about it. I don't care if you run 100 miles a week. If you're living off of pasta and pizza and potatoes and bread, you will not be able to outrun that diet. That diet will put weight on. And, being overweight is not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not fat shaming anybody, but as you get older, it can lead to other health problems like adult onset diabetes.
Right.
And so eating, when I was in my 20s, I was eating everything in sight and, running, an hour and a half, 2 hours a day. It didn't matter. Now it matters. I'm 61 years old. Diet matters a lot more. I switched to this paleo diet 10 years ago, almost exactly 10 years ago.
Right. We started both in 2011.
Yeah, before we even met each other.
Right.
About 6 months before we met each other. But what I found is that I knew someone who was in pretty good shape, and they're always trying to run, they're always trying to lose weight, and it was always a losing battle. So they switched to this paleo diet, and they lost 17 pounds in about 3 months. And this person was not that large to start with. And when I looked at her, I thought, man, that is really impressive. And me, the experimenter, always trying something new, decided, well, let me try the diet. I wasn't overweight.
Right.
I've never been overweight. That's what's kind of ironic. But I thought, well, back then, I thought, well, maybe it'll make me run faster. That's what I always like to hear. So I went on the diet, and almost instantly, I thought, oh my gosh, I just feel so good. I haven't felt this good in 20 years. I think a lot of times people don't feel well at all and don't even realize it because they become accustomed to it. I wouldn't really say that was my case to any extreme.
Right.
However, you can always feel better. What's wrong with feeling better than you feel right now, even if you think you feel great? So that's kind of how I got into the paleo diet, and I've stuck with it. It's really, I've never been on a diet, and I think it's really more of a lifestyle, so I won't even call it a diet. It just means that you're not going to eat any processed foods, which are bad for you. They're bad for the environment. They all come in a plastic package. They're just garbage, and they also are very carcinogenic. And our diet's very easy to follow. People always ask me, well, where are you going to get your carbohydrates? Where are you going to get this? Where are you going to get that? My favorite answer to all these people who eat power bars and all this high carbohydrate food, all this sugary stuff, if you like sugar, eat some dates. And after about 5 or 6 dates, you won't even be able to stand it. You'll have to stop. They taste too sweet, and they're totally natural. But they don't have any side effects. You won't get that sugar high-low drop thing that eating traditional sugar gives you. So that's kind of where I get my sugar now. And as far as pasta and breads and things like that, I thought I was really going to miss pizza. It was my favorite food, and I don't care a thing about it. We get gluten-free pizzas now at local restaurants like Sellen's, who I really like to plug.
Sellen's is a great. They make a great pizza.
They do, and overall, that's probably, for kind of almost semi-fast food where you stand in line and order food, that's got to be the healthiest food in town. And they are very ingredient-driven, and everything in that restaurant's fantastic. And you can go paleo there. Anyway, that's probably enough about that. But yeah, I've really enjoyed it. It's a very easy so-called diet to stay on. Most people get on diets. They do it for 3 or 4 months, they're off. Weight Watchers, all this stuff, drinking Slim Fast, those things are not sustainable.
Those are more designed for quick, weight loss. And in my opinion, the slower you lose weight, the longer you're going to keep it off.
Right.
The more you adopt a lifestyle and make changes, permanent changes, that rather than, oh, I'm just going to like go keto for a month or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with keto. Some people need that for a reset. But long term, I just don't think it's just a sustainable lifestyle. No. So speaking of sustainable, you have 2 old cars that you've maintained, sustained.
I've tried to sustain them. It's been very difficult.
And so I want to talk about your cars. People are really interested in them. Every time you have them parked outside our house, people talk to you, stop, want to watch what you're doing when you're washing the car, and ask you about the cars. So tell me the models of your cars and tell me a little bit about your cars.
Okay, well, I'll start with the first one, which is, to me, the most significant, and it's really one of the only cars that I've ever really collected. It's a Citroen, and the one I have currently is a 1973 Citroen SM US model with a 5-speed manual transmission. I searched for 30 years to find the right one, and finally bought this one 2.5 years ago. And they're very rare. They only made 600 of them, and they're very hard to maintain. So a lot of them wound up in garages with 4 flat tires, and they went into disrepair or rust. So I got started on those because I was always interested in Citroens, but I was scared of them. So the cars that they used to make back in the 50s and 60s and 70s was the 2CV. They made about 2.5 million of these cars. And it was kind of like the people's car of France, similar to the Volkswagen Bug in Germany. And so it was a post-war car they came out with, and I bought one of those for myself for my 30th birthday. It was kind of a treat, about 32 years ago. And then I bought another one. It was a very rare car that was also another unusual opportunity to buy a wagon. So I bought a wagon version of the car, which is called an Ami 6. And there were only about 10 of these in the U.S. It was a station wagon. It was the cutest thing ever, and it was a show car. So I owned that car concurrently with the 2CV. I owned that car for 14 years and only drove it 700 miles. And I sold it to a guy who begged me to sell it to him. That's how these cars usually wind up changing hands. You don't run an ad for one of these. The third car I had for quite a while, when Kristy met me, I had a very rare... I sold those other 2 cars in the meantime. I only have a 2-car garage, and I have some storage space available in Nevada where I can park a car in a garage there too. But that's about it. And so the third Citroen I bought was a 1961 Citroen ID19, which is a stripped-down version of a DS. And the DS, in essence, is the most revolutionary car ever made. And it came out.
That one, by the way, was my favorite.
Yeah, she liked that.
Had, because it was like a tealish blue color.
Yeah, eggshell.
Just like the color of a Tiffany box, basically. And every girl knows Tiffany and loves Tiffany, obviously. But I remember when I first met you, you had that car, and we took many trips.
We did.
We took it to Napa.
Yep.
And so that was just kind of like I guess for romantic reasons, I really like that car.
That was a neat car. That car was really reliable because it was the stripped-down model. It had the hydraulic system that only ran the suspension and not the steering and brakes. So that carved away a lot of headaches, potential headaches that car could have had. And the car, I bought it from a collector who was a major car collector who was liquidating his collection. And the car was partially restored. I had to spend a lot of money to finish getting it sorted out. But drove that car for a few years, sold it to some gentlemen down in Castro Valley. They're also very serious Citroen collectors. So the car went to a good home. Had to make room for my dream car, which is this Citroen SM. And I'll just briefly, just not to use up a lot of time, tell you that in 1968, Citroen purchased the Maserati company because they wanted to get their hands on their engines and their technology. So what they did is they designed this aerodynamic body that only had a drag coefficient of 0.26, put a Maserati V6 engine in it with 3 Weber carburetors, and this full hydraulic suspension with this this steering system called Drivok. It's only 2.5 turns lock to lock, and when you let go of the steering wheel, it completely self-centers. It's the craziest thing you've ever seen. Anyway, that was my dream car. I bought it. It's been kind of a headache. It's been pretty expensive. Everybody warned me that if I bought one, I was going to be sinking a lot of money into that car, and they were right. But all in all, it's been worth it. It's kind of fun. And there's actually a third car I'll tell you. Well, the second car is my grandmother's 1959 Crown Imperial, right, which was her daily driver. And that's a neat car. It's a huge car. It's 19 feet long and 17.5 feet wide. It barely fits in my garage. And that's been really a fun car. That's just kind of a family heirloom. And it's in great condition.
But it's the only one I can drive.
Yeah, it's an automatic. It's the only car. I've got 4 cars. It's the only car with an automatic. All the other cars have manual transmission. And the other car, just quickly, is a car I inherited from my mom, which is a 1991 Mazda Miata. And like all the other ones, it's red with a black cloth interior. And the car is in absolutely perfect condition. It's really the nicest car I own. So that's kind of fun, too. And that's a convertible, so that's kind of fun to drive around with the top down sometimes.
Yeah, so we're going to be heading up to your friend's house later, and doing a photo shoot. They have a mid-century modern home that they're selling, that they have sold, I guess.
Right.
And we're going to give the house and the cars kind of a last hurrah, and we're going to get all dressed up, so that'll be fun. So look for that. I'll splice in some photos later on while I'm editing this. I'll show you guys what that kind of looked like while we're talking.
Yeah, and if you want to look at the house, the listing pictures actually have my Citroen in the listing pictures, which is 1005 Camellia Avenue, Roseville, California, 95678.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes, too.
Okay,
People want to see that.
Yeah, the house is gorgeous. It's gone pending, and it's going to go to some good new owners after my friends have lived there for 21 years.
Yeah, so we're just going to hang out and do the photos and do probably another wine tasting, which is what we like to do. So that's the focus of this show, is food, wine, and travel. Predominantly wine. I want to bring some local producers on here, local wineries, talk about what they do, how they do it. It's not glamorous, obviously. It's a lot of hard work.
It's farming.
So what got you into wine, though?
Well, it was kind of funny. I mean, wine goes almost back to the beginning for me. My dad's mother was from Greece, and they drink a lot of wine. They drink it every day. It's low alcohol wine. They just kind of drink it like water. It goes with all their meals. And so I started taking little sips of wine when I was probably 3 or 4 years old. I think they were just trying to get me to calm down a little bit. So they did have that ulterior motive.
Hyperactive, are you?
That was the case. I think it still is. And their primary wine they drank in my grandma's house was Retsina, which is peach wine with a little pine pitch in it to tartan it up a little bit. And it's an interesting wine.
It is interesting. I've tried it a couple of times. I don't really love it, but I can drink it with food. It needs a really strong food pairing with it. Yeah. Like a garlic flavor or another like strong citrus flavor. Yeah. Or some feta cheese goes really well with feta cheese.
Yeah, a lot of fat, I think.
So yeah. But so what is absolutely your favorite wine of all time, though? I know it's a hard question.
It is. I mean, I've had some great wine, and I probably haven't even had the best wine I've ever had in my life yet, or well, currently I've had some great wine. I mean, really, as recently as last year, we had that bottle of 2016 Opus One.
Right.
And that's on the wine list at Zinfandel Grill in Sacramento for $275, which is $100 less than it retails for.
That is a tip.
Yeah, that's a hot tip.
News you can use.
That is definitely news you can use. Even if you add a 20% tip onto that, you're still way ahead. And it's also a great restaurant. We like going there. So we're going to be going back pretty soon because I want another bottle of that wine. But I've had a lot of great wine. My birthday wine that I bought years ago, and I'm going to be running out of this year in August, is Rombauer. As commercial as they are, and as much as they're known for making Chardonnay, make some fantastic Cabernets. And they make a Cabernet. It's one of the best Cabernets I've ever had. It's the wine that I have is a 2012 Atlas Peak Cabernet, and they only made 250 cases of it. So for a winery that makes hundreds of thousands of cases of wine now. That is a very low production, and that
Right.
wine is amazing. And it was pretty expensive. When I found it, it was I think it retails for about $95 a bottle, and I got it on sale for. It wasn't really a sale. I got a wine, Mike, the wine guy out at, or wine shop Mike out at Mateo's, got me a little discount on 6 bottles. So I got it for about $80 a bottle.
I think it's Wine Shop Dave.
Wine shop Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah, would I call him Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get him confused.
Because we have a friend that does
Mike, the
a
wine guy.
show,
Yeah.
another
Yep.
friend that does a podcast, Mike the wine guy.
Thanks for that correction.
But I want to recommend his podcast.
Yeah.
It's great. It kind of got me thinking about maybe I would start a podcast someday. That was several years ago, and now here we are, and I'm just now starting.
I think to generalize, because it's hard to pick a favorite, it's like picking your favorite kid if you had several, is that I like Oakville Cabernets. I just like big,
Right.
giant Cabernets. And I also like some of the mountain Cabernets. I like Diamond Mountain. I like Atlas Peak. I like Howell Mountain. There's some great wine up there, and those wines have tremendous character and depth to them. But I think, all in all, I don't think there's anything better than Oakville. You look at Opus One, there's Mondavi, Farniente, Nickel and Nickel. I mean, the list goes on. And then there's people that source from Oakville, like Senders. We're in their wine club, and they make some fantastic Oakville wines. So yeah, I think that I'm not a big white wine drinker, really. My favorite white wine by far, though, is Cakebread Reserve Chardonnay. That is just one of the greatest Chardonnays of all time.
But we actually drink a lot of Pinot Noir.
We really do. We really do.
I think that's probably my favorite wine.
It is, yeah.
And I even found some less expensive Pinot Noirs.
Right.
And that's kind of hard to do. Like, it's hard to get a really good Pinot Noir under $20.
Yeah, 20 is about the cutoff
but
point.
There's some like right at 20 that I like really love. So, I'm going to say like Talbot Cali-Hart
Oh yeah, of course.
is going to be
Yeah.
my go-to for an inexpensive wine.
Pinot Noirs are not my favorite wines, but I think they're some of the most interesting because they're incredibly terroir driven.
Right.
So what that means is that depending on where the wines are from, they vary so greatly. There's such a variety of great Pinot Noir in California and Oregon, and of course France. But if you just want to talk about California, I mean, we love Petaluma Gap, Santa Lucia Highlands. My favorite sourcing for Pinot Noir is Russian River Valley. I really like that area. That, to me, those are just absolutely spectacular wines. Those are my favorites. But there are a lot of different areas, even down in Santa Barbara County where these Pinot Noirs come from, and they're absolutely fantastic. They're pretty expensive. So Kristy's right. I mean, we tend to just get Pinot Noir on sale and just try to keep the price down a little bit because you can go crazy. I mean, you can spend $50 to $100 on a bottle of Pinot Noir, no problem.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. If you don't have the budget,
Right.
How can somebody, and if you don't know anything about wine, it's like not something that you want to spend a ton of money on. If you have a very limited budget, let's say, but you are interested in learning about wine,
Right.
how can somebody that doesn't know much about wine get into wine?
It's really easier now than it ever has been. And just to circle back quickly, when I first started drinking wine, it was approximately 40 years ago. So we had this giant store on Howe Avenue. It was so big, it had formerly been a Kmart, and it was called oh man, I can't remember the name of it now. Farmers Warehouse Liquors. And they primarily sold wine though. And so you just go in there, and at that stage, I just buy anything that looked interesting that was under $5. And it's really funny because nowadays a $5 bottle of wine is almost better than a $5 bottle of wine was 40 years ago. Because wine,
definitely. I have to agree with that.
This is the absolute heyday for learning how to drink wine because it's so much cheaper in today's dollars than it ever has been. It's so competitive. When Kristy and I first met 10 years ago, I said two things. I said that there's too much Rutherford Cabernet in the world, which is a great problem to have. And I said, these winemakers are killing each other for that very same dollar.
They are.
That dollar, they're just going at it like sharks. But anyway, my suggestion would be to go to a grocery outlet and just go around and just buy anything that looks interesting that's like under $9. Seriously.
And I think for those on the West, well, we're on the West Coast. For those on the East Coast, there's a store called Aldi. and I think that they have some discounts. But another store that is nationwide is Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's is a great store to go to get some of these wines that you're going to at least try them, and you're going to learn what a varietal tastes like.
Now, when you go to Trader Joe's, you don't have to. Now, we're not suggesting you get Charles Shaw. I just don't. I think the wines are a little weird. They're very inconsistent, even for a beginner. I don't think those wines are gonna make you go, "Wow, I love wine." But get into some. They've got some Chilean wines and some wines from Uruguay. And so their wines go outside the country, go to places, go to Australia, go to New Zealand, try some wines from South Africa, whatever they've got. I would almost avoid California wines as a beginner because the prices are pretty high. And then once you find out what you really want and what you're willing to spend a little bit more money on, then get some California wines. And I'd say if you're going to get California, and if you're not from the West Coast, I would say try to find a label that either says Lodi or Amador County on it. To me, those are the most high-value wines maybe in the world. I mean, when you get to $20 or $25 in Lodi, those wines taste like $50 wines. They're absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, and we both have said Lodi is really the up-and-coming area for wine production. I mean,
that region is exploding.
When I first started going to Lodi, the wines were okay. They weren't bad, but they've just gotten supremely better.
Well, they found something they didn't realize they had, is that there were a lot of 100-year-old Zinfandel vines down there that were just kind of being neglected. So some of these creative winemakers, they brought these vineyards back to life. They'd gone fallow. They brought these vineyards back to life and started using some great winemaking techniques. And instead of making all these high alcohol wines that tend to come from our hot climate, they would pick earlier, lower bricks, lower alcohol, less oak, and they're making actually what I would call fine wine down there at a very reasonable price. And the area hasn't caught on yet, but yeah, I think it might be the up-and-coming wine region in the entire United States. It's incredible. I mean, 20 years ago, all they were making was jug wine, and now they're making phenomenal wines you see in great restaurants. So that's just a great area. And by the same token, Amador County makes a slightly more obscure wine, the Barbera, that is absolutely out of this world up in that area. That something about their climate. They have volcanic soils and cooler weather, much cooler weather than Lodi. And the area tends to lend itself toward real high acid Barberas. That to me, I like them better than Italian Barberas on average.
All right. Well, we're out of time.
Okay.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I don't know. Was it fun for you?
It was a lot of fun. The wine didn't hurt. That was a really nice glass of wine.
Yeah.
I recommend getting some replica wine.
Made me a little more comfortable.
Yeah, it doesn't
hurt. I'm not very
hurt.
comfortable.
I don't usually drink at 2 p.m, but anyway, it was pretty good.
All right. So if you like what you saw here, don't forget to click like on this video, thumbs up on this video, and subscribe to this channel and hit the bell so you'll get a notification when I do a new video. Because you could be next. If you're a small business owner, a winery, a restaurant, in the food, wine, and travel industry, email me to be on the show. Drop me a note in the comments below or email me at misscavegrrl@gmail.com and I'll drop my information in the show notes below. Thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.